It's cute.
Yeah.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to Inside Movies Galore. I am one of your hosts. But tonight we are doing some birthday, shall I say, films. As that is kind of pretty much the
hell does that mean?
For the,
shall we say films?
Well,
it may not be. You never know.
I think some people still call them movie pictures or
flicks.
It's interchangeable. What the no?
You
You sound like a boomer. Don't do that.
But
dignity.
In any case, I shall give this over to Mo. Oh, so why don't you tell us exactly what movie we are going to be watching today?
All right, so tonight we have for you the follow-up to our previous discussion, which was for The Gate, and this is for The Gate 2, Trespassers, also known as just Gate 2, also known as The Gate 2. I forgot to take fucking notes there of the second. There is a third title.
Oh, was that one of the titles? I would have gone to see that.
Yeah, some good marketing that you can do for that one.
Do I have to stop playing Aliens and look it up?
I wrote down third title like hyphen or whatever.
Did you literally write down third title and not the actual third title?
Yeah, it just says third title. Director was once again Tibor Takacs. It was written by Michael Nankin, same dude who wrote the first one. Produced by Andres Hamari. We'll talk about the cast in a moment. It's got cinematography by Brian England, music by George Blondheim. It was distributed by Vision. It was released in 1992, and it doesn't tell us who it was distributed by, but I'm going to just assume a lot of the same people that distributed our previous film. In terms of the cast, we've once again got Louis Tripp returning as Terry Chandler. We've got Simon Reynolds in there playing Mo. We've got James Villamere playing John, and Pamela Adlon playing Liz. She was billed as Pamela Segal. No relation to the fat lying like karate dude.
Quick note on your release date there, though. Apparently, U.S. released 92, but apparently it was an Italian, Italy, Taiwan, and Australia already had it in 1990 per IMDb.
Yeah. Jesus, they shot this stuff not long after the first one. And that kid that plays Harry grew like a sprout.
He grew like 2 feet. What?
Did we know?
Go ahead.
I don't remember if we said, but I'll be honest, I don't remember. Did we note that the previous one is the exact same vintage as our recent coverage of Predator?
No, we
interesting.
Didn't. But that
was a big movie year.
Yeah, dude. Definitely both bangers. Definitely both rental favorites for me as a kid before I ended up owning them. I definitely bought Predator a lot quicker than I eventually, purchased the Gate movies. But
I would say both were my birth year.
Well, I came out that year too.
It was a good year. 87 had some good metal albums as well, which does tie into this shit. Basic gist of this is it picks up, a couple years after the first Gate movie. Terry's still living apparently across the street now. It didn't look like he lived that close in the first movie. I felt like he was like the kid in the cul-de-sac down the way, not across the street. But he's living across the street with his dad, who's established as a broken man in the first movie, along with Terry himself having some issues on account of the death of their mom. Terry's been looking at Glenn's house across the street, which is the house that the events of our first film took place. Just demonic chaos and levitations and...
It's still like a burnt out husk, which is
I
don't know why they didn't tear it down or anything.
Nothing, you'd think in a neighborhood as well off as they were living in, somebody would have came in and bulldozed it over and put up a new, fresh, manufactured home within
Nobody
weeks.
wanted.
It's been what looks like 5 or so years, and it's still smoking.
Hell yeah. What's that, Brandon?
Yep, I said, yep, definitely. Oddly enough, watching this one the first time, I didn't get
Mm.
that. It's like it just dawned on me, like, oh yeah, it is the same place.
Yeah.
How could you?
Well, they
'Cause
watched
I
them
w-
in reverse order this time,
Yeah.
so
Oh, okay. I guess that makes sense.
yeah.
So-
And so basically, he's been contemplating the fact that maybe it's not the problem wasn't that they summoned demons to begin with, but that they just didn't do it right. And that's probably about the best like lead in that we could give to this
Mhm.
without really
And-
getting too much into the plot before
And
we
the
need to.
question we have to ask is, why would you do that?
Why not? I mean, if I was Terry, just fuck it. Why not?
He wanted that.
Yeah.
He wanted the ability to fix things in his life because his life is
Right.
spiraled out of control, and he
Be-
wanted to fix it. That's
Yeah, and also fucking Glenn just moved away and stopped being his friend. Apparently, so
I
screw
know.
that, dude. So first
Well-
impressions. We're gonna go. Sorry, go ahead, Jake.
Well, I was going to say we also got to note the Merkin obsession with property values. If that house is still cratered and smoking after 5 years, then you got to bet there's all kinds of depression going on that block.
Probably lots of burgeoning metal fans being born too. I'm sure. Old Terry living on the block. So first impressions, Brandon. Obviously, this was your first time watching it. Yes. What were your overall? Well, you guys watched them in a fucked up order, but what were your overall thoughts on that?
Well, technically, I saw the first one first. I just didn't remember it.
Excuses.
So, but yeah, essentially, I watched this one first because we had we had decided to actually try and have a watch party for it because my wife wanted to watch the first one, and then it worked out that where she wasn't able to do it. So me and Jake decided, well, we're here. Why don't we go ahead and hit one of the two? So we watched the second one, and it was fun. I enjoyed it. I think that you could watch this without seeing the first one and do well. I didn't have any issue trying to figure it out. That's oddly enough, I did not have problems with it.
Well-
So
Oh no. Do you have anything else?
that's it. Basically, it's slightly more mature than the first one, and doesn't quite have the same family type vibe, but
It's
still,
kind of aimed at teens. It feels like.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it grew
was
up
growing
with
up.
us. Is basically
Yes.
how it works. This one was rated R. It's also worth noting that the first one was rated PG-13. Now, we didn't touch on this in the discussion for the gate, but really it is family friendly, like through and through, with the exception of a couple F-bombs that they drop in there, not of the fuck variety, and an R-bomb as well.
Yeah.
Those are, I think, on their own would have made this movie maybe R-rated nowadays. I don't know how that works, but it's important to note that it is just language of the times. It's unfortunate, but kids probably would have said that shit to each other at the time, and it wouldn't have been considered that offensive, And we do get a little bit of that in this one. We do get a little bit of that same sort of language in this one, but it's very, very brief. And honestly, this movie, whereas the first one definitely deserved a PG-13 rating, I think this one deserves the R rating, but very narrowly. Like, it's still pretty family friendly in my mind.
Some of the effects are a little bit more intense.
You could watch it with the age appropriate kids, is basically what I'm saying. Those kids that you showed Gate to a few years prior when they were like 10 or 11 might be old enough once the Gate 2 came out to watch it with them and not feel too bad about it. So Dustin, first time, right? Any thoughts?
Yeah.
Any
So
questions?
this is kind of one of those. So I collect Shout Factory movies, and this is one of this is one of their releases that I call crime of opportunity releases, where it's not something that I would just randomly, deliberately buy without having seen it before. But if I saw it used, I would take a chance on it, like if it was substantially cheaper than the new price. And I've seen dozens of movies that way in the past. And so I've kind of been holding off on seeing this till I could find it used like that. But when it was like, yeah, we're gonna watch that tonight, it was like, well, okay, let's finally boot this up. So I saw it for the first time tonight, and I think I'm probably gonna be just straight up buying it because I really enjoyed this
Hell
one,
yeah.
possibly even more than the first Gate.
And that's totally fair enough. Like I said before we got in here, I think nostalgia and other factors will always make the first one a little more classic to me, but this one is a whole hell of a lot of fun. I guess an interesting question would be, now that you have seen it, had you seen it before you saw that release, would you have pulled the trigger on it sooner?
If I'd seen it before, yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah.
Because my policy for buying movies used to be like strictly stuff I had already seen and knew that I liked and would definitely want and would have extras. So I used to have like a lot more rules for this before it just kind of became, buy whatever you can get your hands on.
Hey, I mean, I still try to keep rules, but it pretty much consists of, have I seen it? Does it sound stupid? Or am I drunk enough to just fucking buy it on Amazon? There have been those where it's like, I probably should have waited until payday to throw that $80 out there, but yeah, it's done now. Forrest, what was this your first time seeing The Gate 2? And if so, or if not, what were your first impressions?
All right, so I've seen the first one a few times, but this was actually my first time watching the second movie. I remember it was on Star. I remember Stars carried it for a long time, but I never got around to watching it when they had it. And it was a hard time. Had a hard time finding it online until we made it this week's show.
Yeah, it's weird. The first one's available like everywhere, and then when you search for the second one, it just said watched it for me, and I was like, yeah, I fucking know, but
Yeah,
I want to watch it again, you sons of bitches. Let's continue. I'm sorry, I just found that odd.
that's okay. It was entertaining. I mean, not as I don't think it was as fun as the first movie, but it was still but still pretty entertaining. Also, it's pretty interesting to see Pamela Adlon / Pamela Segal in an early pre Bobby Hill role. Not if you agree yet.
Is she Bobby?
Yeah, she's the voice. She was the voice of Bobby Hill.
I don't know you. That's my purse.
Yeah.
I don't know you.
Apparently, she has an extensive voice acting credit. Teen Titans Go, Bob's Burgers, a whole bunch of
She has
stuff.
that voice when you listen to it.
Yeah.
She's got that quality to her voice
Recess.
where it makes
Right.
sense. True story. I'm sure several of you guys saw my post on Facebook, and it definitely did not do it in like a Bobby voice, but for some reason when I was super hungover the other day delivering mail, this dog came rushing at me, and for some reason my reaction was to just
yell,
run.
"That's my purse" at it.
No, I was like, I don't know you. And I just ran away. And the dog, I feel like, almost kind of took pause for a moment. He's like, yeah, that's why we're doing this, dude. I don't know you either. But it was a moment for sure. So yeah, I mean, you got anything else on it for us?
I mean, yeah, it's not. I would say it's not. I mean, for me, it's not. I don't know. I mean, it's not. Not quite. I mean, not quite. I mean, it's an entertaining movie. Although I didn't enjoy it as well. Although maybe not quite the late night classic that the first one was. And also, again, yeah, it was just interesting to see. For me, it was, I had no idea that Pamela Segal, Pamela Adlon was in this movie. Having seen her in so many other movies and shows, I had no idea that she was that this was one of her. I think this is one of her. I'm trying to think how early in her career this was.
Early, and she's the fucking highlight of the movie too, for sure.
Yeah.
What about you, Dave? Is it your first time with The Gate 2?
No. I, in fact, Some years back, I actually found a copy of The Gate 2, and I do believe that it was on Daily Motion. Now that I think of it, at one point, at one point in time, downloaded it for free. Because I've got some programs that can do that, but and I had never realized that it did have a one until later, because I happened across it and I was like, "Hey, babe, remember that movie that we watched? Yeah, let's watch it." So I was able to put it on a disc, and we put it on a spin. So I wasn't sure what to think of it at first. I did think that it did bode well with the story. I thought that I thought that the lead was definitely hot, and I didn't realize she was who y'all are saying she is.
I thought you were talking about Terry. I was going to say he is.
Yeah, there you go.
I'm not talking about the boy who lived before he lived. Okay, but well, he was kind of having a kind of a Harry Potter moment.
He was hitting that age, where he's got that hair where like girls might think he's cute at school. It was adorable.
Well, away from the first scene where they're together, you can kind of tell that like the girl is sort of into him.
Yeah, and they look good together. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, and they nerd well together.
Yeah, exactly. Like he's a fucking full on badass. Like we didn't even touch on it in the first one, but that Sacrifix album is like everything your parents thought heavy metal albums were back in the day, with the fucking spell book in the interior and the backwards. Yeah, it's like everything that you urban legends told you heavy metal albums were, right? And like in this one, Terry's basically everything that they thought D&D players were back then.
Well, and he dresses like one for the summoning thing, but he
wants to be
actually
Elstar.
This was very much during the demon scare.
Yeah, the Satanic Panic.
90s, the Satanic Panic, yeah, which is great. One of these days we'll have to cover that movie WNUF Halloween special, which I thought was great when it came to
that's getting released by Vinegar by
I saw that.
I know, I've got it
company.
Pre-ordered.
I have it pre-ordered too. I kind of hope they number those slipcovers, because I'm genuinely curious to know what number I got. Because they announced it, and I got my pre-order in within 20 minutes of the announcement. So I think I might have gotten a pretty low number.
If you're not first, you're last. Ricky Bobby. Jake, this was obviously your first time with The Gate 2. Any thoughts?
Right.
In terms of initial impressions?
Right. Well, although I've definitely seen Ricky Bobby, and that's one we'll need to cover one of these days.
Never even heard
Anyway,
of it.
so this was definitely my first time seeing this, and again, as we said, I watched it first before the other one. It's kind of a weird way to do it, but it worked. This one was it was a pretty fun movie. Again, I feel like it was a little more straightforward in the pacing and the plotting than the other one was. I wouldn't necessarily hold it up as a paragon of writing. It definitely, I feel like it pretty well jumped the shark a couple of times during the course of the film, but it's a fun movie, and yeah, Terry's kind of a fun character, and Liz is a fun character, and Mel was a fun character. There were pretty much everyone was fun. Pretty much everyone was fun character except for her boyfriend. That was like.
I liked the evolution of John through the movie, though.
Yeah, there was a smidgen of an evolution there. I like that Mo apparently co-starred in Warehouse 13. I thought he looked kind of familiar.
It'd be nice if they call me back. That's what I'm saying.
What was that?
It'd be nice if they'd call me back. That's all I'm saying. They fired that one dude for mooning people on the set. They might need a new fucking.
And speaking of people with inappropriate behaviors on set or off set, another role that I noticed for Pamela Adlon was that she was writer, producer, and co-star of a pair of Louis C.K. Series, the Lucky Louie and also Louie. So I wonder what her take on that whole scandal was, but
I think Tessa said something about it.
Yeah.
It's interesting that she's probably had the most widespread career of anybody involved in either movie. You know,
Yeah,
that's maybe Steven Dorff.
Yeah, Dorff's been in a lot of stuff, and yeah.
Kelly Rowan and Jennifer Irwin from the first movie.
Oh, true
Right.
enough. True enough.
True. But yeah, overall, it was fun. I'm glad I saw it. I may have to keep an eye out for this Shout. Both of these are on Shout, or
I think so,
The first one is
First
Vestron
one's
Video, the second
Vestron.
one's Shout.
Yeah,
Okay.
Vestron and
They're
Shout,
worth having,
yeah.
if anything, just to bust out for your friends that want to watch a horror movie, but you personally know they're not ready to watch like some fucked up shit. You put on The Gate, or The Gate.
And,
I think most of
at
my
least,
friends that would watch any horror are already used to.
At least you can say that now it's, at least for now, they are in print.
Yeah.
For now.
Yeah, get them while they last, folks.
All right.
Get out there and purchase them. I don't know. I think that this movie is pretty much a great example of a solidly fucking fun sequel. That's all it's trying to be. It's not really trying to elevate this shit to new heights or anything like that. I mean, it's literally a movie about the kid trying to recreate the whole demon summoning from the first one, but doing it right. And then it really turns into like a genie gone wrong type flick where they're wishing for stuff and it's turning to poop. So I'd be interested to see where Jake thought they jumped the shark within that plot, because it feels like they jumped it right out of the gate. But
I was thinking more along the lines of like Leprechaun Gold, where supposedly it like disappears or whatever.
I liked it turning into poop for some reason. Weirdly enough, in my mind, I remembered him throwing down the money at the restaurant into the waiter's hand. But
that would have been much more interesting. I will give it that.
And we were talking earlier about how
it would have gone
really
differently for him, I'm sure.
It at least needed that scene where he reaches into his pocket also and finds out that he's got like shit in his nice maitre d/host suit. But yeah, I really like this movie. Like we were saying, I pretty much am always going to rank the first one higher for obvious reasons. But this one is like, some days I enjoy it more because it's just a good time. I pretty much remember it that I rented The Gate first and didn't know this existed for a little while. Not a long time, probably a few visits to the video store. And then I came in and it was like back in or something. And I was like, holy shit, there's two of those. And on this cover, the eyes have like lizard eyes. Maybe there's lizards in there. So I just rented it and there was no lizards, but it was still a pretty fucking cool movie. So, always be a fan of it. So basically the gist of it is, as we already kind of covered, Terry's been working up the courage to like try this demon summoning again. And he goes into the skeleton of Glenn's house from the first movie. And he ends up like firing up this badass high-tech demonology setup that he's got going on in there and working on summoning these demons again. He's got everything together. He's got his sprigs of wheat. He's got his loaf of bread. He's got his lapis lazulis. He's got a little hamster to sacrifice, which is probably the only scene in the movie that I don't like. And, he's in the process of doing this. He's even got his voice rigged up to like this badass PA system. Like he is that, Satanist, air quotes, that your parents thought were playing Dungeons and Dragons back in the day, like with this purple silk robe and everything. It's amazing. And the whole reason he's doing this is to try to like bring good fortune to his dad, who has been suicidal and depressed and drunk since his mom died, which they touched on in the first film. And that's his whole goal, is to use the power of the shit that they encountered when they were younger and do it properly so that he can bring like some good results to his life. He's in the midst of doing this when this ragtag group of like kids show up. Basically this scumbag dude, typical leather jacket bully motherfucker in 80s movies, named John, and his girlfriend, who we've talked about extensively at this point, Liz, and his little cackling sidekick Mo show up and kind of interrupt, this ritual. What do you guys think about their introduction? And did you assume on your first viewing that they were just totally going to fuck with them right away, or was it kind of a surprise when they participated in the shit?
I was going to say, that kind of went in a different direction I thought it was going to go. I thought he was going to screw with it. It was going to mess up the ceremony, and then things were going to go off that way. But instead, they kind of just like, okay. They kind of went from, we're going to, harass you and rob you or whatnot, to, all right, let's just keep going in this and see where it goes. I just thought that was I always applaud a movie when it goes in a direction that I don't expect, because a lot of times writers don't do a lot of original writing, and movies become super predictable in how they're going to act. So whenever they do something like that, and it goes, and I go, huh? Okay. It just makes me feel a little bit better about that.
For sure.
It was kind of a, like, they show up and it's like, oh, are these people going to mess up? And then it's pretty clear pretty quickly that's like, oh, these guys know each other. Okay.
Or at least the girl, Pamela Adlon, and she's aware of who Terry is. The other guys are just like, this fucking dork, what's he doing in here? And they very easily could have just taken the lazy way out and had him bully him and like mess up the thing and have it go wrong, and it still really wouldn't have affected much of the narrative of the movie when you think about it. But having them get involved in it, I think, was a little bit more interesting than doing it that way. And pretty much as soon as they encounter him, Pamela Adlon's character is like interested in what he's doing, because she realizes that he's not just out here playing at some shit. He's got this whole high-tech setup and clearly seems to know what he's on about. And this produces one of my favorite lines in the movie, where the dude asks him if he's doing like Satanist shit, and he's like, no, demonology. Satanism is for pussies.
Yeah.
So what do you guys think? I mean, obviously after this, he goes about performing this ritual and everything. I'm not going to describe it in intimate detail. What do you guys think about this whole scene with the laser circle and the hamster sacrifice and everything else?
Well, let me say one thing about Terry, which is, I don't know why, but I always got more of a Corey Feldman vibe from the original character. So it kind of now I admit, when I saw him in this at this point, it didn't really make any difference to me then. But I will say that watching it, thinking back to it now, it's like, wow, he turned out a lot nerdier than I thought he was going to. I thought he would have been kind of like, he would have been wearing the glasses, but he would still be, like leather jacket wearing type, more metal type.
Trust me,
character.
dude. We play like that, but no. we're still nerds at home. And he thought he was alone, so he was like wearing his silk robe, fully comfortable with his candles and shit.
But,
I don't know. Anybody
otherwise,
else got it? No, go ahead. Continue, sir.
I do not care for hamster sacrifice, though.
It is unpleasant.
In his defense, he does like freeze on that, and like John's the one who actually does it.
Well, and he gives it a little boop on the nose and a kiss before he puts it in that like portable cage earlier. So he clearly knows that and he looks bummed. And like you said, he couldn't do it. And that John dude is like, in the name of this fucking rat and whatever this bullshit is. I always love that part too, because he's just bastardizing the whole thing, but it still works.
Well, it becomes kind of clear that the demons in this universe are very lax. Like, you don't really have to get the words right, or, as long as you do roughly what you're supposed to, like, within like a ballpark, it'll work.
Yeah, it's almost like you just have
It's
to
almost
have
like you don't
a
even
couple
need
heavy
the
metal
actual
posters.
rituals,
Yeah, you just need a couple heavy metal posters and the right attitude, and you can see, which almost kind of leans into, I think, the somewhat parody of a cautionary tale thing that I feel like they're sort of doing with these, because there is that connection between like the heavy metal and the demonology in the first one, and then in this one, obviously, they're just expanding on it. So it's
the demon's whole approach seems to be close enough.
Mm-hmm. Hey, we'll take it. We're good.
So, any guys on that bottom row got any thoughts? Forrest, Dave? What do you think of that first ritual with his badass like headset and his lasers and shit?
I think it was the shit for the kind of thing that he was trying to. I mean, this was an old school like fucking computer. I mean, it's the whole it's the box screen, from the IBMs.
Well, in '92, though, that would have been like high tech, right?
Well, yeah,
that would have been super high tech.
If you had a computer in the '80s, you were rich.
God, yeah. Depends on the computer.
That blue light going in that circle, that was fucking ape shit. So
it was green, David. We need to get him those glasses and show him the world for the first time and make one of those viral videos.
Like we had a Commodore 64 back in the 80s, but that was roughly a computer. Couldn't do the stuff that his computer does.
You might have been able to program some summoning on there. You know what I mean?
I'm sure it was good for playing Pong or whatever you did in the day.
What was that game?
Maybe Pong was good for that machine.
I mean, I played lots of cool stuff like Choplifter and Load Runner and all that.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. If it can run Choplifter, it can summon a demon, bro. Yeah. Jake, what were you saying?
I'm trying to remember that game that I've played. It wasn't Double Dragon. It was it was like that though, right?
Was it Toads?
No.
Okay.
They're like the going around punching people, the sort of one of those scroll type games.
Would you punch money out of them and like go to restaurants and shit?
Well, I don't know about restaurants and shit,
River
but
City
yeah.
Ransom?
Yeah, it sounds like River City Ransom.
They made an X-Strike movie about it.
Well, no, I don't think that was it. Oh man,
keep thinking on it, and when it comes to you, let us know. Unless it's pertinent to what you're about to say.
Well, I was just trying to think. Like we were talking about the game, what we used the computers for back then. I remember we did have we did have we had that at school. We did not have that at home, sadly. But we did have Carmen Sandiego, and I loved playing that as a kid. That was a fun game. But,
oh man, I'd love an old Apple with like Oregon Trail loaded up on it, so I can die of syphilis from the comfort of my own couch. What did you say, Brandon?
Now, if you're talking computer hamster sacrifice, there's always Maniac Mansion.
Maybe it was Double Dragon.
In a microwave.
Classic.
You died of dysentery.
What do you have? I'm going syphilis all day, dude. I'm trying to mingle. You know what I mean? What do you got for us on the summoning scene? Because after that, we're pretty much into the shit again.
I'll say it's some evil speak shit right there.
This was very evil speak.
Yeah.
It had a lot more of it than the first one, because in the first one they're kind of just like, oh, just whatever will work, Also, honorable mention to that scene where the Lee sisters are in that cabinet, and we totally missed that when we talked about it, and they come out with the garlic around their necks, and she's making like the crucifix with the butter knife. That's a classic. I don't know if you're with me on this, Forrest, but I feel like he missed an opportunity not to play some merciful fate over the whole proceedings.
Totally.
If they were going to blatantly plug metal into any portion of either of these movies, it would have been that badass laser beam summoning session.
Yes.
All right. Well,
or some accept.
Hell yeah. Basically, the session goes off pretty well. They have all this black sludge like approaching them, and there's some demon winds fucking blow gas at them. The smell of the dead.
I feel like we should also mention he kind of convinces them like really quick that this will work pretty quickly because he has these like glowing pyramid things floating in the air pretty quickly into the ritual.
And surprisingly, the two guys who looked like they could have been like part of some gang or whatnot, they seem to go along with the idea relatively well,
Well, if you're gonna find some nerd in some abandoned house doing some shit, like if he's doing something that they think it's Satanism at first or whatever, which going with the whole heavy metal vibe, there was some cringe lords on the side of like, yeah, Satanism is like my jam. I knew a lot of those dudes in heavy metal growing up, and it's dumb, but whatever, to each their own. Point is, if they're gonna find him doing some nerd activity in this abandoned place, the thing that's least likely that they kick his ass for is some type of ritual like
Satanism.
That. Yeah. So it makes some sense, and like, whoa, this kid's in here doing like some fucking demon shit. And that's kind of their attitude.
Let's hear him out.
Yeah, like let's see what this is about. And even John is skeptical at first, but Mo and Liz go right along with it. Like, let's do it, dude. And it works, And then John immediately pops a cap in that little dude's ass, or right in his chest, to be specific. Our little minion dude that they managed to summon. And I gotta give it. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, in fairness, looking at him, it's kind of hard to tell what part's the ass.
Oh, he's got a little tail, a little sprig back there, wagging around.
Well, they won't be winning any beauty pageants. Let's put it that way.
I got to give it to Terry, man. Okay, as a character throughout both films, he is never a bitch unless it's the only time he's like actually visibly proper scared is when it seems warranted. And he holds his ground against like this scary dude that already showed that he had a gun, and he even resists quite a bit after the dude has the gun pointed at him. Terry ain't no bitch.
He like puts the gun up to his chin, like
yeah, he's not even gonna kill him with that shot. It's just gonna maim him. It's just and Terry.
Oh, that shot would have killed him, I think.
Maybe. You'd be surprised, but point is, Terry don't back down. He's never been a bitch in either of the movies, and he's probably one of the only kids in horror movies that you can really say that about.
Yeah.
Lil Glenn was a bitch with his astronaut sweater through most of the first movie. Just letting Terry get fucking taken into the wall. That's fucked up. He's rubbing it afterwards, like, I know I'm a bitch, Terry, I'm sorry. So at least he was, acknowledging of it. But yeah, Terry's a beast. He stands right up to that guy after he shoots that thing. And it doesn't really work out great for him, but, obviously he's got the attention of Liz, who thinks he's a pretty sweet dude, because he seems like he kind of is, And this movie, in some ways, follows somewhat of the same structure of the first one, and that after this initial crazy sort of discovery or experience, they think it didn't work. Terry, has the foresight to grab up the body of this little minion and put it in the jar of formaldehyde or whatever I would assume that is. Which honestly, I'd like to have that in the background of just my horror room, like it would be
for a few seconds. They do go somewhere, like they are in
they
another dimension.
You're right,
and they all see
glimpse.
it, and it's like, well, what was that?
Yeah, they do get that glimpse, and there is a bit of truth to the fact when John has him up against the wall with the gun, where he's like, "I'm the asshole. You almost got us killed. Like you're the asshole," and it is kind of true on some level,
He's not really wrong.
Yeah, he's playing around with this shit and like endangering a bunch of people, and he knows that that's the deal this time. He knows that if all these guys get out, it's like the end of the world. It's not like he's ignorant like in the first movie. But he takes it home, he puts it in that rad jar, and again, like I said, that would just be a cool thing to have in the background of your horror room, like that minion from the gate in the jar. I'd like a couple of them on the sides too.
I
Sans
bet you could get
jar.
somebody to make you one of those without too much trouble.
I feel like they probably exist, out there somewhere. Some horror replicators doing it. But he's just kind of chilling with that, and then he notices that his dad, who was once drunk, has now gotten a job. You know what I mean? And it seems like his life is on the upward climb again, which was the whole reason for doing this to begin with. But then, there's a hitch to it. Like his dad gets a job at the old airline, but it's not flying a plane. It's actually that he's doing baggage handling, which what's wrong with that? But I get the way that they use it in the movie. And then he discovers, sort of as this has happened, doesn't even discover it, it just happens, the thing breaks out of the jar and it's in his room and he's got to
it recovers. Yeah.
I feel like they almost kind of nodded to that in that scene where that Dustin kid in Stranger Things has that creature in that aquarium and then it eats his cat.
Oh, Dart. Yeah.
Yeah. That reminds me a little bit of the scene in The Gate now that I think about it. But yeah, he goes
when they were conceiving Stranger Things, they basically pitched it to Netflix using a clip montage from period movies, and they probably had The Gate in there.
Would not be surprised, because there is definitely. I mean, I'm sure if we watch the first one again with that in mind too, there might be bits of things in there. But point is, he's got to fetch this thing out of his bedroom. He's got to fetch this little motherfucker out of his bedroom, so he suits up in all this sports gear, and he gets his hockey stick, and he clears out his hamster cage, and he's ready to deal with this. Again, another example of how together Terry has his shit for a kid in a horror movie. Arguably in this one, he's kind of like the main dude. So, yeah.
So that big ass thing was a hamster cage?
Yeah.
Shit, that hamster was living in luxury.
Yeah, you didn't see that big yellow tube he pulled out of there? That was
I must have missed it.
Well, I mean, if you're gonna, use it for what he was gonna use it for, I mean, I suppose you'd want it to be comfortable.
And
I guess.
I have to say, his mother probably was the one that was pulling in most of the money. One of the things I didn't want to say earlier, but I'll say it now, is pretty much is after Reagan kind of ended the strikes at the airlines. I mean, pretty much all fares and fees and, well, not fares, all pay went down a ton. People who are making 60,000 were making 20,000 or minimum wage at that level. So it's kind of so I can imagine that he was probably making next to nothing. I would imagine his mother would have to be the one making the money in that family, guys. That's a nice house.
Oh, dude. And again, we kind of sped through it in the first one, but there's that scene where Terry comes back. I mean, it makes sense to save it for this one too, because Terry's the main character. But there's that scene in the first movie where he first comes back to his house after that first night at Glenn's. And he comes home and there's just a note on the fridge that says that his dad's gone on business, which, if you take this one into account, probably meant that he was out drinking. So he just crumpled it up and all pissed off threw it into the sink. And then he eats that piece of stale pizza. And you see that his kitchen is just kind of pizza boxes and nothing. So his dad was definitely probably spiraling down that route of not knowing how to take care of his kid without the mom. And then also not having all that money. Also,
I kind of got a different impression, because when he's looking at his outfit in the closet, it looks like the wings are from Pan Am, and Pan Am went out of business around a few years, around when the first Gate movie came out, or in between, right? When did Pan American die?
I don't know, but I feel like you're kind of almost right on the money with it.
So, most of my experience with it's Catch Me If You Can. That was like 1 or 2 years before this.
Yeah, they used to be a big thing. I feel like you see it in several fucking Bond movies and shit.
Well, they were
Oh,
a
yeah.
major.
Yeah.
They, from what I understand, they were a pretty major company, and well, a lot of people got really screwed when they went out of business.
Mhm.
Well, see,
Well,
but
that's
they
the
don't
thing.
ever mention that in this. And when he wakes him up to tell him that he's got, or he comes in the room to tell him that he's got the job, he says it's with that same company. You know,
I mean, pilots used to
Mhm.
be like super important. They were treated with a lot of respect. It was quite a respected
Yeah.
position.
it's high
And
class
one
living.
could say that maybe during this time that was still possible. I mean, it's hard to say.
Possible. You also have to take into account that, the dude that wrote it was
Yeah.
probably like our age then, so he was writing it from, it's like how certain people still think teachers get paid a lot.
Oh yeah. I mean, it could have
Fucking-
even been in a transition from when they were making like bank to where they were making next to nothing and having to live out of their darned airplanes half the time.
but he definitely gets the job back at the same airline, which we're
Yes.
actually right at that point. Like he goes into the room with the fucking sports pads on and the hockey stick. What do you guys think about that scene? I always feel so bad for the little minion in that section.
I thought the little minion things that they were doing were the closest to comedy that this movie had.
They're just adorable and funny sometimes. I mean, I think it's intentionally done, and this scene is a good example. I compare it almost, it's like a more tame version of like the cat scene in Reanimator, like it gives you a good proper just sort of physical comedy laugh for a minute right there. Also honorable mention to when the monster finally explodes in gate 1 and little Glenn goes flipping through the fucking air. That was a really good scene.
I can't believe we forgot to mention that. Yeah, that was
we
kind of one of
skirted
the
over.
other effects where it's like, okay, that does not work.
Yeah, that was the other moment where it's like, all right, but and if anything, I could see that as being that kid's retelling of it. You know what I mean? Because everybody had that friend who had that brother that was like, yeah, I did a backflip and just jumped out of the way of it. You know what I mean? Yeah, I don't know. We did skim over a couple of pretty funny parts in that first movie, though. But watch it yourselves. You guys will find all those scenes on your own.
Indeed.
Pretty much, he gets the little minion into his hamster cage, and then the thing is like under his control, kind of. He doesn't realize it at first. He's just like, all right, I've got this thing in the hamster cage. And then our friend Liz comes over. She has a habit of not knocking when she enters residence. There's a line about it later, which I think is pretty cool. But yeah, she comes over and, they're kind of not sure what to do with this little guy now that they've got him captured in this hamster cage. And she comes up with the bright idea to just wish for things like a genie lamp. And so she burns was it like a piece of his noodles? Especially love that part too, where he sets his noodles down by the cage and the little creature is like eating the noodles. It's fucking adorable. But yeah, she just burns like this piece of his, Chinese food bucket that has a sun on it because she wants the rain to stop, and it works. I love that part where he's like, "Oh no, you got to have all this stuff." Like he knows what he's talking about, but at the same time, like Dustin and a couple other people have mentioned, they're fast and loose with the rules in this shit. So this girl kind of figures that out in this scene where she's like, oh, "We'll just ask him for it and see if it happens." And so they go on like a shopping spree.
If it's whatever works.
Before we get into that, though, an interesting question would be: do you guys think that you would have started wishing for shit?
No, fuck that. No.
It's
Nothing
always be
from
careful
demonology is worthless.
It's always be careful what you
assuming
wish
that they
for.
actually are demons. Like, you can't trust demons. Like, everybody assumedly knows that.
I think if we eliminate like knowledge, I mean, obviously we all have knowledge prior, like from horror movies, to be like, this just seems like probably not a good idea. You know, maybe it does go good.
Shoot, he has knowledge for horror movies, and obviously he knows this stuff, so he should know better too.
Then again, I could see trying it on something small. I don't know about my dad right away, but I would have maybe tried it like the girl did, where it's like, well, let's just wish for a car or something, like an item, and see what happens with that, you know? So if that's if that's the route he took, it would have avoided the whole like conundrum he was in through most of the plot of this, was that his dad was at stake, you know? So she had the right idea, if you really think about it. Like, let's just wish for a Corvette. So they have their little shopping spree and unrequited or really non-existent romance. Oh shit, Jake's asleep. Later on in the movie, she pretty much straight up says that she still loves that douchebag.
Yeah,
and he just kind of,
who knows
why?
why? I don't know.
I don't know, man. He looked good in that leather jacket, I'll say that. But
Well, he's very confident, and women like confidence. That's, there you go.
I don't know if that's confidence. But yeah, without dissecting that too much, pretty much, you know,
he was a little bit less than a lump on a log than the boyfriend in the first movie, but
well, that dude just was there for a minute. He was prettier though. If we're gonna rank him in terms of like funky boys, you know.
Hey, he was good at burying dogs. That's what he did.
He buried the shit out of that dog. Okay, other side effects aside, he did. He even replaced the sod, if you guys remember right. A lot of boyfriends wouldn't have done that. Yep. Anyway, they start wishing for shit, and they go on like an awesome shopping spree, and they have a good night, blah, blah, blah. Basically, they figure out that the stuff turns into shit. It has like a half-life, you know? And that's sort of where he has this recognition that something might be wrong with his dad, you know, because that was the first wish that he made. From the looks of it, when they were on their shopping spree, mostly she got all the stuff. He took home a couple of presents and a guitar. So nice, modest little haul from him. He was at least being careful where that was concerned. Because when they were first talking about all the shit that was now in their possession, he was like, yeah, you should see my house. And it just shows the coffee table right there with like a few presents on it that turned into turds, you know, which I just think is endlessly fun. I don't know. The fact that the wishes literally turned to shit is pretty great. Meanwhile, you know, like they were spotted.
Like mud to me, but yeah.
Well, it
There's
did.
a lot of shit in the table there.
It looked like mud, but I don't know. I've had those days, but yeah, it's.
That's like a phobia of mine. So I told myself.
Probably doesn't smell like no mud though.
No. So basically, while they were doing this, though, they were spotted by Psycho Boyfriend and our little pal Mo, and you know, so they confront them about it, and they kind of sort of halfway learn. They don't halfway learn it. She straight up tells them that the thing was actually alive, and they got all this stuff like by wishing for it from the little minion. So they go and they confront Terry and pretty much rough him up a little bit. And it turns out they've already broken into his house and stolen the minion. And so now John and Mo have this thing in the trunk of their car, or in a bag at first, actually. It's one of the better scenes in the movie, actually, is where that thing gets out of that bag after he blows those hits of weed on it, and it just wigs out and fucking attacks both of them. I don't know. Do you guys have any thoughts on, like...
That was pretty fun. It's like, hey, man, I got an idea. And it's like, oh, are they gonna... Yep. Okay. So I kind of saw it coming.
And it has such a
blur blows into the bag, and it's like, oh.
I don't know what it is. The fascination.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, I wonder what the fascination with stoners and blowing smoke at small critters. It's interesting.
I never thought that it was cool, man. Honestly, once there was like this stray cat that was around that we got
seen it
stoned
so many times.
just didn't seem to have a good effect on the little guy. They don't,
Mhm.
you know, and I was a teenager, and it wasn't just me. As an adult, like I would totally flip out on someone. I think if they were trying to get some random animal high, because
Mhm.
it's not the same thing for them, man. You know,
Mhm.
the dog's not relaxed because dogs actually seem to take to it, but cats don't, and most
Oh,
other
give 'em
animals.
Give them some catnip. That'll be good.
Yeah.
Yeah, they have their own drugs. Like, there's no reason to blow a fucking bong hit at your cat. That's just a dick move. But for the sake of the scene, it was hilarious, and it had similar results to when I saw them blowing it at that stray cat. That thing would fucking wig out, dude. And it was dangerous because cats have all sorts
Anybody
of claws
notice
and
it had
teeth.
like anybody notice it had like glazed eyes in that scene?
Mhm.
I thought that was a really nice.
It fucks
like,
those
little
guys
touch.
up too. Dude, that scene gets so insane, especially when he blows the fire hydrant on him finally at the end. I always, for some reason, just about die laughing right there because it's already gotten crazy enough, and then he thinks it's a good idea to fire off a fire extinguisher in the middle.
Like, why do
Yeah.
they just have that in the front of the car? Like,
Right?
Well, why not?
You should always have a fire extinguisher in your car, real shit. But yeah, you definitely shouldn't fire it in the middle of a fucking melee with a tiny creature while the dude that's fucking firing it doesn't even have his feet on the hands or brake.
Right.
He's driving from the back seat, if you remember at that point.
Yeah.
So it gets so insane that you almost forget who's in charge of the car at one point during it, you know. But yeah, these dudes now are in possession of the little creature. They've been scratched and bitten by the thing, especially John. He got bit several times. And this is kind of where it introduces the idea that they don't need the gate to come through, and they're using these people as some sort of a conduit. You know what I mean? Because in the first one, they were just kind of coming out of a hole. In this one, they introduced the whole idea of there being like this holy trinity of badass like demons that have probably been mentioned in several dozen black metal albums. And, you know, if they can each make their human sacrifice, they can come into the world and unleash sort of the same hell on earth that was going on in the first one, but I imagine much quicker, you know, because they're actually teleporting themselves into our dimension or whatever. And they kind of do this first through John. You know, they go to this fancy restaurant and they're like living their best lives.
I love
or whatever.
that. I love that whole fucking scene when he goes into the bathroom and then all of a sudden he starts like really screaming or whatnot. And every fucking butler in the fucking place, they turn and look. It's like there were like 4 or 5 other butlers, like in the dining room. There were like 4 or 5 other butlers in there who turned and looked, and everybody who was the creme de la creme of this society started looking back, and I was like, oh, all the rich people's attention were gotten.
Dude, and he's just proper going off in there, and then the whole scene where he like bursts out of there finally after shooting all that pus all over the place while he's in there, and then he just like bursts out of there and jumps through that window. I don't know. I just love that whole sequence for some reason.
I like the setup to that scene, where it just kind of shows like the restaurant staff sort of talking to each other. It's like, you know, who put these 2 in my section? What 2? You know which ones.
Yeah, I would
It's
like
almost got that, like,
I would the escargots. And
Hey, they knew what it was though, so that's something. But
it almost reminds me of a scene from like some Blank Check type movie, you know, where it's like someone who's rich all of a sudden that's not supposed to be rich. You know what I mean? They were doing those movies quite a bit for a while there too.
It's like the Zoidberg story in that one Futurama episode. It's like, if rich people like it, I'll take it. 1 art, please.
Yeah.
He's at like the gallery and he just starts waving bills around. 1 art, please.
What were you gonna say, Brandon?
Yeah, the whole transformation, the demon transformation that they kind of go through. Well, it's only really a slow transformation for one of them, but that one they'd used a lot of interesting makeup effects.
Yeah.
Definitely to turn the stomach because you didn't. I mean, I didn't know what he was going through the first time. I thought maybe he was going to do like a street trash and melt to death. So that would have been interesting.
He almost did in
Uh,
some respects. He was spurting fucking weird pus and like fluids, and then he just started slowly turning into that badass Ray Harryhausen monster that he eventually became. Which is just such a cool reveal too in the movie, I think. But basically, there's that whole scene after he jumps through the window and he takes off in that car. That's like a one-shot scene of him swerve. I mean, that's a crazy stunt driving scene when you look at it, because he goes out the gate, around the one car, in front of the other car, swerves out of the way of like another one, and then crashes into the other car. And it's all done in like one shot, and then that dude just runs out towards them, and that's a lot to go through for a movie like this, just shows that it was different times, right? Like they did that shit for real right there in that one take, and then it's him coming out and seeing it as it's happening, and then it goes into him running down towards the car, and then obviously, you see that creature a little bit further beforehand. The minion is like pounding on the lid of the hood back there or whatever. And then it eventually pops the hatch like right before all that stuff happens. So it escapes, and we don't see it again until later in the movie, I don't know. Anybody else have anything they want to add in on these scenes before we move on? Forrest, you got any thoughts on all this? Is he one of our sleepers? Okay, well,
Why is everybody dying?
Basically,
What
well, technically, it's after midnight on the East Coast, so.
Yes, it's very late.
I haven't been paying attention. What time is it?
12:38.
2 hours after Adult Swim would normally start. Well, we're not fucking 20 years old anymore. I feel you guys. Thanks for hanging out.
But yeah, the
pretty...
whole. I was just saying the whole scene there. It sets it up. I did like how they gagged and bound the demon afterwards. I thought that was funny.
I was laughing at that. Why did they gag him? Like what? What was the purpose of that?
He did bite him. That whole sequence is great, and then they get their shit, and then it turns to shit, and the movie really kicks back off again pretty much when they're like have found out that there's a whole sequence that really does kind of drag the gate 2 down, where it's like him finding out about his dad, and then and it really doesn't drag it down. It's just it's like they could have just shown the one pass over it. The dream sequence was cool, but it could have been like earlier in the movie. Yeah. When he was first having the doubt. Like I would have probably put that sequence right after his dad told him that he was going to be like a bag of Chandler. And then I don't know. I would just place that differently, but we get that whole thing going on, and then basically his dad has ended up in this accident, and he's got to try to fix the shit. So they head out to do that.
They do that whole they do that whole showing up at the door. You don't want to get that from the military at all. And that's kind of how
that was kind of almost kind of funny. Like when the when the airline company guys like come to his door, like it's the freaking Marines or something.
Yeah, right.
Right. He died in the line of duty or something.
Well, yeah, it's like they treated it like
was like drunk and crashed on the fucking runway. Still got fucked up, but still, yeah.
And then of course he's tailing behind Terry, the one guy, and he's like, "Oh, of course, we're going to take care of 85% of your coverage." So I'm like, "Yeah, you should be on this particular one because you put him out there in the fucking thing. You should take care of the whole fucking thing, buddy. Take care of the whole buck, you know."
See, maybe it's a sign of the times we live in, but I was watching it like, that's not bad. Yeah, 85%. Just no questions asked. I'd assumed I'd had to see them to get half that,
Well, I like how the airline guy is like following Terry at the hospital, basically begging him not to sue them.
Yeah. It's such a good touch, because they didn't need to throw that in there. It's just in there to be fun. And I think there's a lot of this movie that's in there to just be fun. But, basically after that, he sets himself off to, for sure try to reverse this thing, right? So they figured they need like this receptacle to put it in. So they decide they're going to use like his mom's like music box that she had laying around the house that had all their old pictures of each other in it and whatnot. She does gut it. We see that she still has like the ballerina part of it at a funeral later in the movie. We'll get there. But basically, they prepare this box to go do it. And I especially love that part where they're going down the road and like he's doing the incantations to make the box magic, basically, to contain the little minion. And it like, smokes out the car.
And she's still like skeptical and it's like, how do you know this will work? Are you doing it right? And it's like, and he's, and the roles are kind of reversed. He's like, well, let's just try it. And, it lights up and starts smoking. And it's clearly, doesn't matter all that much.
And they fully spin out like on the street and shit. And then he's kind of waving away the smoke. Like, we should probably hurry. Like that's such just subtle humor there. I love it. And, I was it before or after this that they
another one of those close enough occult magic moments.
Exactly.
I think it was
which is really what both these movies are built on, is that whole like it's close enough. That's kind of the running theme through all of it, is this idea that it would be that easy to just summon and deal with demons, which is hilarious when you think about the culture at the time of thinking everything that we did was the devil, and that's literally what we were trying to do when we listened to a King Diamond album or something. I
don't think I've ever heard King Diamond before.
Oh, he's amazing.
Yeah, I saw him open for Slayer. He was great.
But yeah, basically, they're heading out to do this shit. Again, I'm kind of confused on when they hit Mo with their car exactly. But, it's at some point in this sequence, they are reversing out of a parking space and they hit him with their car. Right after they mention that they got to find those guys to find the minion, And it turns out that he's got John, who, as we covered, was going through his whole transformation in this fancy upscale restaurant, and burst through the window and took off in an amazing fucking car crash sequence. He smuggled him into this warehouse that he works, which we do see them smoking a joint at that warehouse earlier in the movie, which is one of my favorite scenes. And also one of the scenes that bums me out the most, because because Mo is like, dude, my heart, I got a heart condition. And he's trying not to like smoke weed with him right there at work, but then he's like kind of afraid of this guy also. So he's like, what the hell? And then they do actually have like a really chill scene where they're just sitting there smoking that little joint, that impossibly small joint. I guess the 80s was a different time though, you didn't always have like enough to roll a full joint. So sometimes you just smoked like some roach in the back of a warehouse. They seem like good friends, but like that Mo dude definitely does whatever the other guy tells him, which is hilarious that they end up being like, the one dude is this super tall Harryhausen demon thing, and the other guy ends up being a guy in like a Power Rangers rubber suit. But that's essentially what we push towards from this point on, is them trying to go get this little minion to put him in this box so that they can cast him away and close the gate again.
Yeah, and there's
and
this whole thing about like sealing it with things that of love or were made by love or something like that. Or
No, there was the one item that needed to be in there that was a symbol of
love.
unbroken love.
yes, that's
which
what I'm
is,
talking about.
You know, they needed a ring, is basically what it was, wasn't it?
Well, there wasn't there like a pair of wings that was on her shirt or
It was his,
something
it
like
was
that.
his dad's Pan Am
Yeah.
from his
There
uniform.
you go.
Yeah,
There you
Was
go.
their way of looking at it, like, oh yeah, her feelings for him were a lot more than the feelings for her previous boyfriend.
oh yeah.
So they put all this shit into this box, and they head to, out with Mo to this warehouse, and they eventually find out that the dude is turned into this Harryhausen creature. What did you guys think of the reveal? Excuse me, that whole last sequence of that monster?
They kind of kept him under wraps for a lot of it. Like they show his hand reaching for her through a ladder.
Yes, and you got a little bit of a shadowy glimpse of them, but when they really unveil
they
it,
build to it, yeah. So I thought that was a nice touch.
Any guys have any Freddy vibes from that fucking boiler room that they were in? I kept expecting them to come out there and screech someone to death with a hearing aid. I don't know what it was, but it just really reminded me of that scene of Freddy's Dead for some reason.
I was just watching that for the 30th anniversary of it yesterday.
Yeah, I was gonna say I think Freddy's Dead came out a few days ago.
Yeah, Monday was the 30th
however long
anniversary.
ago. It was Monday.
Yeah.
So some people posting about it.
Yeah, I got hardcore Freddy vibes and that boiler. You can't even call it a boiler room in half the Freddy movies, even, because it's this full-on boiler complex or just a random industrial
like a factory or something.
Yeah, it's just a place with a bunch of tubes that he can scratch his gloves on. So I got that vibe from it. And then, like you said, the way they build to the reveal of that full creature is pretty dope, I think.
And it makes me think of so this other podcast I listened to, they did a review for the Stallone movie Cobra. And they talk about during the climax, when Cobra pushes the villain onto this hook that leads into a furnace. They point out that the way that this thing is designed, the only thing that this factory, this piece of machinery, could possibly do is burn whatever is on that hook. And what could the possible purpose of such a factory be? Because that's the only thing that this machine does is, burn the shit out of whatever's on that hook.
Fuck yeah.
So kind of like a factory with no clear purpose, and that's kind of the feeling I got from the setting of this movie.
Fair enough. Place
too.
They might even move some things around for that whatever looks like.
They said
cool,
warehouse, but it looks like there's manufacturing equipment there.
It's a full-on factory with pipes and all types of equipment and shit. But basically, it's just a place for this thing to jump around and look cool for a couple of seconds, and that's pretty much what it results in. As we get this reveal that John has turned into this awesome Ray Harryhausen creature. Definitely distinctly different from the first one, but sharing some design elements, I would say. Yeah. The general shape of its neck and head region was kind of similar to that giant creature we got in the last one. And it was the giant creature of this movie in that it was much larger than the other people. We got some cool sets after a few here that were pretty dope, but I don't know. Anybody else have any thoughts on the general warehouse scene with the reveal of the creature, the death of Mo?
Mo just kind of falls the fuck off that off that railing. Like it's
His
just kind
heart-
of like,
no.
you know, what happened? You know, and it's like, oh, my heart. Like that's pretty much how he dies.
Though they
And,
kind of set it up. If you look at the makeup, it's he was also transforming into the demon. at
Yeah,
the
he had some
time.
boils forming and shit.
Yeah.
He got scratched, so it took longer for him because he didn't get bit.
yeah, that's true. Like he didn't get nearly as torn up.
No, definitely not. I guess the way that you turn into these minions, or actually, I wouldn't even call them minions. What they turned into entirely, because they were wearing like full-on body suits, and they were definitely bigger than the minions.
Oh, they were the top. They were the three
Yep.
demons. They were just basically being possessed by those demons.
That's why Terry looked so awesome once he was possessed. Like he looked like a totally different, like 90s death metal fucking album cover mascot. It's, you know, basically that's the whole gimmick of the movie, is that they don't need the actual gate. They can come through these people if they can infect them, you know. And I love that part where they're walking up to the warehouse and that dude's saying, like, he's in here, he changed. Like, I chose this place because of the steel doors, you know. I had to put them away. And Terry's trying to dismiss it, like, you don't change from minion bites or whatever. And then he hears them bang on the shit. And it really cements it cements the fact, too, that when Terry got bit in the first movie, like, they just went in and watched a bit of a movie and then it got attacked by a zombie, you know. It wasn't, not even that much time had passed, so he never actually saw what happened from a minion bite if some time had passed. Whereas these dudes, like, got bit by this shit and went out to this whole extravagant dinner that they blew a huge wad on, you know. So they were probably there for several hours, I would assume. Whereas Terry in the first movie got bit by him down in the hole, and they were watching Quest for Fire 20 minutes later, and a zombie popped out and he got carried away to the other side. So it doesn't even break any logic from the first movie, is what I love. Does that make sense?
Yeah. When I said, well, maybe, I was just saying that was probably his reaction. It's like, you don't change from a demon bite. And they hear the pounding, and it's like, well, I don't know, maybe.
Yeah, it could be a thing. Clearly it was. So basically, you know, after this, it's clear that he's gotta get to his shit and do something about all this. You know, John metamorphosizes into this creature and steals Mo's body, and they go away to somewhere else as they pretty much fuck off on out of there. This is where I'm a bit fuzzy on it, because I did watch them again back to back. What happens exactly after they leave there? Does he go back to the house and perform the ritual at that point?
Yeah, he's
they
like,
do the ritual.
There's a little bit of dialogue, and it ends with, "I know where the gate is," and he goes. And
yeah, and he goes back to the house, exactly, and he performs the whole ritual again. To make a long story short, they all end up over there in this other fucking plane of the demons, and it looks like a goddamn Morbid Angel album cover for half of it.
Actually, to me, it looked more like the Beyond from the Lucio Fulci movie.
That too. I mean, all that stuff. You know, when you really get it, when they get up there onto that whole like sacrificial platform thing, and you're seeing them, but also looking down into the pits of the gate. You know, like that's like some Morbid Angel shit.
Definitely.
You've seen what I'm talking about, right, Forrest?
Yeah.
I think Morbid Angel's like a New York band, aren't they? Or are
Florida.
they Florida?
Cannibal Corpse is New York.
Yeah.
Yeah, an immolation and shit like that. So an immolation album cover then. You know, it could have been the same shit. Like you're just looking down into the pits of fucking hell, and these guys are up here. There's like a Harryhausen creature and a dude in a Power Ranger suit, and then all of a sudden like Terry starts mutating into the shit too, and they're trying to force him to do this sacrifice.
No, I
what-
still
what-
haven't seen Psycho Gorman, but he kind of looks like Psycho Gorman.
a little bit, yeah.
A little bit, yeah.
These effects would not have been out of place in that movie. They were just done a little bit better. You know what I mean? But yeah,
but I keep waking up late. It's so annoying.
They full on have like an early 90s death metal battle royale up there on this platform above this like pit of hell that's just, you know, spewing out these dark energies or whatever. And thankfully, in the whole, you know, melee of the shit, somehow the music box that, you know, Terry used to look at in his mom's music box that they used to seal the little demon in, that's getting chucked around like an Ace Ventura package through most of this sequence.
Yeah, it pops open and the music plays and he snaps out of it.
Yep.
Exactly. And he kind of has a moment of clarity, decides that he's going to just stab the big Harryhausen creature.
He throws that knife right into its fucking face and it just falls over. That was so
it's pretty great. And then how did they even I mean, I think she just whacks the other dude with the box a couple of times.
Yeah, they
just like
push
him over after all that.
Well, and then he chucks the thing into the light. Light
he
in the
takes
middle
it
of
and
the
chucks
hole.
it into the gate, which is the normal, you know, I mean, I guess at this point, that's how you have to end it, right?
And of course, you have a shot into the funeral.
Well, that we're not quite there yet. Basically, you know, he chucks the shit in there, and you know, they end up outside, and then remember he's covered in all like those horrible like blisters and shit, and she pretty much assumes he's dead, because why wouldn't you? Because he is, you know.
Yeah.
You guys have
She has like a good long cry over him too, and it's like, damn.
She really does. What do you guys have any thoughts to add on like the whole sequence in there where they're fighting and up on that fucking platform and shit?
Oh, I thought it was just good campy fun. I mean, I had a blast with the scene. I thought it was kind of dorky and aggressive all at the same time. You know, I mean. It had its moments of like cheesiness, but it was a fairly solid ending, I think, to me for the time period. You know,
I think that his like slow, or not necessarily slow, but slower transformation into it. Like there was more than a few shots where he was like partially the way they're transforming as far as Terry goes. And then he was fully there. Like the reveal of that was pretty sweet too. I don't know.
Like every time they'd cut away from him, and then they'd cut back, and he'd be like substantially more changed.
Yeah, it was a good, easy way to do it, but also make it convincing in the way that the whole scene was playing out. You know, I like the whole reveal of the way he looked. I think that was a strong point in the movie.
Basically, like an advanced minion.
Yeah, exactly. Forrest, do you have anything to add on these parts?
Not this time.
Well, think on it.
Yeah.
I think it's a strong ending to the whole thing. You know, we end up with our main character like presumably dead, and then we lead into the awesome funeral scene that Dave was mentioning, which I don't know how you guys took this, but I took it 100% as them kind of almost making fun of the happy ending of the first one.
It did kind of feel a little bit like that. I was kind of like, damn, did he die? And I was like, I don't know if I like this anymore. It bums me out.
Yeah, and they play it out like that. I mean, if you look closely, or rather if you're just paying attention, you see that she's got the lapis lazuli around her neck and the sprig of wheat
and the symbols are on his coffin.
on his coffin.
Oh.
But I wasn't sure if that was just because they were like a rad, like, you know, metalhead couple, or if that was because she was doing some shit, you know.
I thought it was gonna be like a kind of a darker ending, like she was gonna try, bringing him back, and then it was gonna just get worse.
You could very easily cut the movie though to where it has just a down ending like that, and call it a day, and then
I like what they did a lot better, honestly. So I was fairly happy with this.
it was fun. Like I said, it was a fun way to do the same thing that they kind of did in the first one, but in a more over-the-top way that kind of almost poked fun at it.
Who needs chicks when we got demons?
Yeah, that was such a good part, too. Because, you know, earlier there was like, who needs demons, man? We got chicks. I love that whole shit with those two dudes, too. They're like the bulk and skull of this movie, you know?
Yeah, that was what
That
I
was
was
kind of
thinking.
part of it I didn't quite like as much, because it's like, oh, nobody died. Okay. Because when they crawl out of the coffin, you know, after like Terry is revived, and you know, I like how everybody runs away. Like he gets up out of the coffin, and everybody at the funeral runs away screaming. Like that was fun.
Yeah. And really, they give you plenty of time that I could make a seamless out of this, because it shows them walking away for like 30 seconds before it cuts back to the coffin where they crawl out.
I don't know
so you could easily cut that out.
I don't know if any of you rolled after the credits, but there's a scene.
I enjoyed that a lot.
Where the hamster comes out.
What?
Yeah.
There's an after credit scene?
Yeah, there is at the very end of the movie after the credits.
Yeah, they don't kill the hamster
They
even.
cut back to the coffin, and the little hamster from the very beginning crawls out of the coffin too. So the hamster is okay.
Holy fucking shit, dude! I've been watching this movie since, like I said, I was like probably 8 years old. I have never known about that because I've always just stopped. Oh, God, I should have known. They hold that camera on them too for too long for there not to be a fucking post-credit scene. How did I not? Thank you. I'm gonna watch that like directly after we're done with this.
Yeah, that's
amazing.
That's one thing I will say. I actually was disappointed in the way it ended, because I felt like it was a cop-out to me. I wanted to just see the guy, see it just end like that, because I don't know, it just felt like a cop-out to me. But especially, I mean, if the film was going for a lighter tone,
I think he could have kept the other two guys dead.
Yeah, I think
they could have. But I mean, honestly,
or if suddenly like they like shot him back down in the coffin or some shit, and they went yo or some shit, you know.
Well, dude, you got to take into account that the gate came out in, what was it, 87? So this dude already had solidly like almost 5 years of hearing people complain about the fact that he didn't kill anybody in the gate. You know? So I could totally... Exactly. I could totally see doing this ending as a way to be like, fuck every one of you. Yeah.
So people actually have to die? No way.
Well, dude, I mean, look at like I said at the end of our gate discussion, that movie is a solid fucking horror film, okay? And when you really tally the death at the end of it, it's actually a +1 because that dog comes to life at the end of the movie.
Yeah.
And that dog was on its way to dying
the
whole
same
time.
basic thing that happened in this one was that it just ended up with the... Again, you didn't really have any major deaths that stayed dead, I should say.
No, yeah, nobody stayed dead. It was fully... I mean, his dad was alive at the end, you know, on his crutches there. Like, I think this time around, yes, it's kind of admittedly silly, but I think it's intentionally that, you know, to be like, all right, you guys cried your fucking eyes out about us like not killing anybody in the first one. So we're just gonna do this whole movie and make it seem like people have to be dead this time around, but then they just crawl out of a casket at the end. That's fucking hilarious.
Including the hamster.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
like
Not
Dustin
know
said.
about
They're
that.
what's that?
How do you not know about that?
Sometimes you just don't watch all of them
Just-
to the end. Sometimes.
Well,
Yeah,
you never really
Watch it, dude.
in the 80s. You never really watched the credits because most people just didn't put anything at the end of the credits.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was credit scenes.
It was
or,
not
like, credit
really
rolling and then-
noticeable. It was not really noticeable until Marvel started their films.
Well, the reason to watch it back then, at least for me, like prior to modern days, was to find out what music was in the movie. If there was like some popular music song in the movie outside of the score, I might be like, all right, I'll watch till the end to see
Yeah, there weren't
like
a
what
lot of
songs
them,
were in the movie.
and it's only really if they were trying to set up a sequel. Like a good example, Masters of the Universe. They had that of that moment where Skeletor technically comes back to set up the sequel at the very end of the thing. Oh, sorry if I ruined
That's an
it for
example.
anybody.
Or I mean, even with Full Moon, you have like the Doll Man post-credits sequence in Bad Channels. That's the main one I can think of. Most of the time back then, if there was a post-credit, like a post-movie thing, it would be like the end of Mandroid, where it says continues next summer in Invisible, the Chronicles of Benjamin Knight. And they do a joke like reference to that at the end of Bubba Hotep, where it says, continues next summer. And
there
Bubba
was
knows
supposedly supposed to be a sequel to that at one point in time. So,
yep.
But
so it's just a thing they did back then. Honestly, I think the thing that I respect the most about these two movies is this dude never even tried to fucking make more than the two. He did the two. They were awesome. He moved on to do a bunch of, oh my God, my cat just broke something. He went on to do a bunch of like nonsense creature features, and Christmas movies, which apparently is something a lot of these dudes work into.
He also did 2 made-for-TV Sabrina the Teenage Witch movies.
Yes, he did have a huge hand. He directed several episodes as well. But yeah, Fred Olen Ray took a similar career route where it's just like direct some bangers and then make shitty creature features and Christmas movies for the rest of your life. A lot of those creature movies or Christmas movies that you see in like those memes where it's like the wall of generic Christmas movies.
Yeah, they all
This dude,
like Hallmark and Lifetime.
Exactly. This dude and Fred Olen Ray are responsible for like half of that wall of shitty movies.
And he also did 2 episodes of Red Shoe Diaries.
I can't really do that right now.
What the hell's going on?
well, I think at this point in time, why don't we talk about these special effects or the production of value of the film?
Yeah, I think it had some pretty good effects. About maybe a little bit lower than the first, but not that much. Makeup effects are really good.
Well.
Makeup effects good. I like the stop motion as always. I thought that was pretty good for the creature feature.
Here too.
They
But
had good designs in their demon forms.
yeah, I would have to say that too. I thought it was the demon forms were actually pretty decent for probably the lower budget that they probably had. But anyone else? Maybe Forrest? Did you like any of the creature effects on?
Yeah, I think the special effects were pretty well done. About as much, probably like I'd say about as good as the first one.
All right.
I wouldn't say that. I mean, they're sorry about that, guys. The cat broke a fucking like pitcher
Well,
made of a bunch
hopefully
of
not.
glass. So there's like a broken glass minefield that we gotta figure out after this. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. The effects work. They're not the best. I mean, like, I think some of them surpassed the first one, but then some of them obviously show that they could have been done a little bit better. And I think that's most horror movies of the age. I often forget that The Gate 2 is not also an 80s movie, you know, because it kind of does still have that feeling. And I think that's.
I mean, the 80s really didn't end until around 1992 anyway. Like a lot of early, like you watch if you look at popular culture from the early 90s, it feels like an 80s hangover.
Really,
Yeah.
and
I mean-
truly, it's more of the 5 years. Like 85 to 95 was mostly in that similar culture zone.
I mean, even like even late 70s to early 80s films are coming out in 2020. I mean, look at Grizzly. I mean, a movie can have a perspective year that it comes out, but for distribution purposes and for the public purposes, it can come out in an entirely different year. You know, just because the director wants it that way. But
Well,
other
it's
than
not
that-
even always down to that, too. It could be down to when the studio wants to release it. Somebody mentioned earlier that people had seen this as far back as a couple of years before, and that's wild, but makes sense, you know. I don't know.
Favorites?
Anybody got any, like, favorites? Yeah, we're getting there, bro. Anybody got any favorites?
It's kind of hard to pick one thing. I just had such a good time with this.
I like that whole summoning scene at the beginning. I thought that was pretty cool.
I like
Yeah.
I like the part where they woke up and all the presents and the car was like all shit.
Yeah. It's classic. What about you, Jake?
Oh, he's gone.
Oh, well. Forrest?
Probably when they were in the dark world fighting probably the finale when they were in the dark world fighting the demon.
Yeah, that whole sequence, man. Like I said,
Yeah.
there's so much death metal cover in there, and then like cool monsters slugging it out. Yeah, it's a bit different than what we got in the first one because they're full size, I guess, people going at it. 2 of them in suits, 1 of them like full stop motion. It seemed like. So just everything about that is kick ass. I can't see how that wouldn't be like at least some sort of a highlight for anybody that watched the movie. You know.
Okay. What about you, Dustin?
He already went, I think. Didn't you?
Well, if I really have to pick, I think when they figure out that they can get stuff from the creatures,
That's a good moment for sure.
like I enjoy that. It's like, there are rules. You have to do this. You have to do that. And it's like, what if we just try this? Hey, it works.
Okay.
So that was good.
So
Really,
anybody
a lot
have
of
like
this was
anything?
good, so.
It really is. It's a fun sequel. It's not one that you have to put too much thought into, but it still pays off and adds to the first one. It's a well calculated sequel, if there ever was one. I don't know.
I think the music was fairly similar.
Yeah, I don't recall in this one even as many moments as in the first one where the score really struck me as something good.
Neither did I.
The first one had some moments where it stood out for sure. This one just felt like it was, I don't know, there.
Okay. Well, I think that's all the time.
Anybody else have any thoughts on the score?
I didn't notice the score this time around, actually.
Okay.
I think standard is the term I would use.
Yeah, it works. I don't know. Anybody else have any thoughts on this movie before we close it out?
That the lead girl was hot. Sorry, just
What
gonna say
about you,
that.
Brandon?
I guess that's something.
I think that's a good one to end that on.
I suppose.
I say, I try to wrap my head around I sometimes try to wrap my head around the fact that's the voice of Bobby Hill.
Fair enough. I think that The Gate 2 is a great sequel that everybody should watch if they've watched the first one. I think it's definitely worth noting that it's one of the more solid sequels in especially 80s and 90s horror history. And both of them have rad fucking posters. So
Alrighty. I think that that's it, ladies and gentlemen. So why don't we start with you, Mo, so that you can tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do.
my name's Mo. I do Drunken Master Studios. If you want to see some full moon content, come on over there. We got some cool stuff going. That's about it.
Okay. What about you, Forrest?
All right. Forrest Bennett. I'm based in Long Island, New York. Independent film producer based in Long Island, New York. Always I've several a few projects in the pipeline. Recently acted in a music video for a group here in New York called Theophobia. The video for that song should be coming out soon.
Very cool. And what about you, Brandon?
SeptumSin, SeptumSin versus the world. We like our physical media. Of course, we're working on our. We're working on the Versus Awards. We're going to be the first to host it, so it's going to be SeptumSin Versus Awards, and that's going to be on the 30th of September. We're trying to get the presenters together. So if y'all are hearing this and you want to reach out, if you want to do some presentations on some, of course, hook up and we'll see what we can do. But otherwise, as far as movies galore, we've got some fun stuff. I'm sure Dave on his outro can let you know the movie coming next because it's his pick. And that's it. And good night.
Alrighty. Thank you very much. Heading over to you, Dustin. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Well, I live in Mulligan. I collect horror stuff. I have a channel for showing off my finds, The Crypt of Horrors, and I also have an Instagram, The Crypt of Horrors, and you can find me on Twitter as The Cryptaxis.
Alrighty. And my name is David Streggy. I'm one of the founding fathers of Inside Movies Galore. Thank you for coming along with us on this Gate journey. It has been a pleasure. Hopefully, you will like our content. But we will definitely not be done with this month. For next week, we are going to be going on a film journey with a Disney classic called The Four Diamonds, which unfortunately the mouse has vaulted and may never see the light of day. But thankfully, someone put it up on YouTube for us so we can check it out. So be with us next week for that one. But I also moonlight under a different channel called Delusions of Grandeur, where I have actually put up within the last 4 days 4 pickup videos. So I've been busy on that. Also, check out 2 of my reviews that I have out. I reviewed Jacker and Jacker 2, which come from the Sleaze Box. Also in the works. Stay tuned over the next couple of weeks. I've got some big plans for some big interviews, and I mean big, possibly. So thank you for listening. Have a great day, evening, or morning, wherever you are, and just don't go into your backyard thinking everything is going to be rain or shine. Night all.